We don't need another mouth to feed, my son said, and slid a janitor job across the table with my name already penciled in. Before we continue, tap subscribe and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I keep a ledger of places that believe me first. He said it like policy, not cruelty. We don't need another mouth to feed in this house. Then he placed a single sheet in front of my plate as if it were a napkin. Cleaner. Night shift. Start Monday. He had written Douglas Cook in tight block letters on the line for applicant. I smiled so gently even the glassware relaxed. You think of everything, I said, and lifted my fork. The meatloaf tasted like something I used to enjoy. Before we go on, I added, voice even as tea. The plan had been different. My retirement speech lived in my pocket all day, folded in a neat square, growing warm against my palm. 40 years. 40 Christmas parties missed for double shifts. 40 winters salted with overtime so a boy could have textbooks and a tuxedo and a ring he did not have to return. I pictured my son clapping my shoulder, Lily pouring the cheap wine we kept for birthdays and wins, 3 mismatched glasses lifting toward the dented light fixture, a promise to sleep late and walk the river. Instead, the fork clattered out of Christopher's hand. Lily's mouth made a perfect O. The silence widened between us, a chasm with a tablecloth over it. You quit? He said. The color rose in his neck the way steam curls from a kettle. Dad, you cannot just quit. Did you think about what this means for us? I did, I said. 40 years buys a cake. I thought we might have a slice. Celebrate? Lily's voice came bright and hard. She set down her water as if it were evidence. Chris, your father thinks we will feed him for free. The overhead bulb hummed. It cast a flat light that makes people look like drawings. In that light, my son looked like a manager trying out a face he had seen in a handbook. You will work, he said. Tomorrow. Stock shelves. Flip burgers. I do not care. You are not living on my paycheck. I hear you, I said. You are the breadwinner. He softened by a degree. Lily watched my face the way a cat watches a closed door. The television started in the next room. The casual talk of strangers who did not know they had wandered into a court. I cleared plates and ran water over ceramic until it ran quiet. In my small room, I lay on the bed and stared at the ceiling where car lights painted slow ribs of brightness. The framed photos on my dresser watched me. Christopher with a gap-toothed grin gripping a new glove. Christopher in a thrifted tux with a rented boutonniere. Christopher at a kitchen table older than him, leaning forward with a manager voice he did not earn at home. Through the thin wall their voices traveled as if the house had been built for this. He'll loaf all day, Christopher said. He has already mooched since Mom died. 1 week, Willie said. Give him a deadline. Or we take his pension and place him where he cannot argue with the schedule. Beggars cannot be choosers, he added, and they laughed like people who believed the joke was born with them. The words reached me cold and clean. Beggars, see, nursing home. Dead weight. I lay there and did what I have always done when somebody throws a sharp thing. I did not throw back. I measured. Morning arrived in squares through the blinds. I poured coffee into the mug that says Whitmore, with the paint rubbed off the W. I thought about what you said, I began, taking my seat. A man should contribute. Christopher blinked. The script in his head did not have this line. There is an opening at my company, he said, regaining his stage. Whitmore Industries. Janitor. Night shift. It solves everything. Perfect, I said, and I meant it. Minimum wage, he added. Beggars, choices. Of course, I said. When do I start? Monday at 7. I'll clear it with Mr. Fillier. Whitmore this afternoon. Leonard would have questions. He would also have a memory box. Lily reached and patted my hand like you pat a dog who finally sits. See? Reality is not so hard once you stop being dramatic. Reality is a ledger, I thought, and smiled as if I agreed. The house itself seemed to listen that day. Old wood knows the tone of a family. My room smelled like lemon oil from the dresser and the paper smell of an envelope I keep for hard months. On the bed, I set 3 objects in a line: my ledger, the folded letter with a grease mark from a long ago garage, and last month's utility bill where each green check mark felt steady as a heartbeat. A man needs tools. They do not have to be heavy. They have to be true. Monday at 8:15, my phone rang hard enough to dance on the table. "Where are you?" Christopher's voice scalded. "I vouch for you." Leonard was waiting. Now I look like a fool. "What time?" I asked mildly. My memory plays tricks. 7:45, he snapped. "Tomorrow." And no senior moments. "Do you hear me?" "I hear you," I said. I set the phone down and listened to the clock fill the kitchen with its little steps. At 2, I sat at my desk with 2 manila folders. On the left, the photos I had taken in January when Lily left work papers scattered by her coffee. On the right, the vendor copies a longtime friend confirmed without asking why. Numbers have tempers. If you know them long enough, you hear when they lie. I did not explain. I did not threaten. I sent a calm message to the address listed under Henderson and Associates. Subject line: reconcile. The attachment spoke a language accountants understand. Date, totals, matching vendor lines. Not many, the right few. I closed the laptop and fed my copies into the shredder one steady sheet at a time. Plastic teeth sang like a small saw. At 6:43, the front door banged against the stop. Lily's heels stabbed the hardwood. She stopped in the living room. Mascara had made little rivers under her eyes. Her blouse was wrinkled, where people had wrung answers out of her. "They suspended me," she said to the air. Then to me, because I was the only person in the room not using her as a mirror. Someone sent evidence, side by side. My expense reports. Real vendor bills. Everything the auditors need. "Truth enjoys daylight," I said, and meant it. I handed her a tissue. "Do you want tea?" She stared in that long way. People stare when they realize they live in a house with more doors than they can see. Christopher came in tight as wire. He threw his keys onto the bowl, and they missed and clanged to the floor. "Tomorrow I drive you in," he said to me. "You clock in. You say, 'Sir.' You do not embarrass me again. One more trick and I follow through on every promise about your pension and placement." Placement. He could not say the words and make them clean. "Understood," I said. He mistook my tone for defeat. I let him borrow that mistake for one more night. He slept badly. I slept like a man who has finally stopped arguing with his own good sense. At dawn, I stepped out with my mug and stood by the hedge. Mrs. Alvarado from next door was coiling her hose. "Big day?" she asked. She has a voice like bread. "Full day," I said. "You go into that big building where they keep the good chairs?" She winked. "I see those folks in the lawn. They walk fast to look important." "I will walk at my speed," I said. "You do that," she said, and pointed a hose at a rose I planted the year my wife died. "This one needs kindness with a backbone." "That is the only kind that works," I said. I went back inside and hung the mug on its little hook. In my room, I laid out my ledger, my old company badge from a tour years ago, and the folded letter with the greased thumbprint. I held the letter a moment. It smelled like dust and machine oil and the best part of my life. I put it in the inside pocket of my coat. A man does not wear armor. He carries proof. Then I put on the uniform Christopher purchased with tight pride. The fabric scratched a little. A costume always does when you are not the role. "I will drive," he said, jaw set. In the car, he gripped the wheel and narrated rules. "You do not speak to Mr. Whitmore unless spoken to. You stay in the service corridor. You follow instructions. You do not pretend to forget. You—" "Today will be different," I said, and it was the first sentence that made him truly listen. Whitmore's glass caught the Oregon morning and broke it into clean panes. The lobby smelled like marble and money and coffee. People move through their work like fish through a river, never noticing the banks until the water drops. Christopher thrust a mop into my hands. "Hold this," he said. "Mr. Whitmore makes his rounds." I held it. I placed the bucket at my feet. A tool is only a prop if you decide it is. Leonard turned the corner with his tablet and his silver hair and his habit of seeing what other men miss. His eyes, quick and kind, moved to my face, away, and back again. A slow recognition rose, like an old song in a quiet room. "Mr. Whitmore," my son said at full brightness. Perfect timing. I solved our staffing problem and my family problem. This is my father, the janitor. Conversations nearby faltered. The air cooled as if the vents had listened in. Leonard stopped walking. He looked at the mop. He looked at my hands on the handle. He looked at the man who had forgotten to ask questions before he performed answers. "Christopher," he said, voice level as a table, "you brought him here?" "Yes, sir." My son squared his shoulders. "He needs structure." Leonard's gaze moved to me. It carried a dozen years in a garage with a door that stuck in winter. "Douglas," he said, tone changed. "Come with me." We left the bucket. The handle clicked against the marble. It sounded like a small gavel closing a small case. Leonard's office has floor-to-ceiling windows and a credenza with a safe built into the end. He did not ask if he could open it. He turned the dial, then the handle, and took out a leather folder, the color of a baseball glove, after one summer of catches. He placed the page on the desk. The paper had a crease from the time I folded it in my coveralls. A smear of grease darkened the corner where my thumb had pressed while we stood in his garage and shook on our lives. He read, not for me, but for the man who had never been curious. "I back you with everything I have. We share risk, we share work, we share wins. Douglas Cook." His finger tapped the other name. "Leonard Whitmore." He slid the paper toward Christopher. "That is not real," my son whispered. "He worked at the factory. I married a woman in a dress that cost what a single month of this company's coffee costs now," I said. "I do not need a corner office to know the corners of a room." Leonard pressed a button. "Marla, bring the shareholder summary and call security for a quiet escort. No scene." Christopher flinched. "You cannot fire me for a misunderstanding." Leonard's eyes did not warm. "I can remove any manager who treats people like props. I can certainly remove a man who parades a founding investor with a mop as a joke." Marla came and went like a good sentence. She set a file down and left the air undisturbed. Leonard opened it and turned a page so my son could read a line with numbers that never cared whether he believed them. "You own this?" Christopher asked me. "I own the part I earned," I said. "I also own my choices." He looked very young then. He looked like a boy who had seen the ocean for the first time and realized he had called a pond a sea. "Dad," he said, voice breaking its own shape, "please fix this." I could have. I could have asked Leonard to suspend, to call it a teachable moment. I could have grabbed the wheel again, the way I did when he was 8 and steered too close to a mailbox. I looked at my ledger in my lap, then at the grease mark on the letter. In the corner, the abandoned mop bucket caught the city in an oval of water and shook it in place. "No," I said, "I will not undo your lesson to preserve your comfort. You built this moment. Stand in it." Security appeared. 2 men who looked like fathers who bring juice boxes to games and hold jackets for girls who want to run. They waited. Leonard nodded at them. "Escort him to HR for the handoff." Christopher did not fight. He walked between them. He did not look back. When the door clicked shut, Leonard sagged by a fraction and rubbed his eyes with thumb and forefinger. "You did not have to let that land that way," he said. "I did," I said. He loves performance. He needed an audience to hear what he missed. Leonard smiled without warmth. "You are still the only foreman who could fix a machine by listening to it breathe." We sat and let the room settle around the truth. He refolded the letter and pressed it into my palm. "Keep it," he said. "The garage lives in that paper." I put it in my pocket. It felt like a spine. We walked back through the corridor. People tried not to look. Kindness does that. Curiosity nearly undid it. The elevator sighed open. We rode down past floors we built from drawings and grit. Outside, the city wore a brighter shirt. Sun touched the hood of a car and made it a sharp coin. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Henderson and Associates, suspended pending investigation. I did not reply. Some news does not want to be spoken to. At the bus stop I sat because I like the old rhythm of schedules. A woman glanced at the coat folded over my arm. "Long shift?" she asked. "Full shift," I said. "Full is better." Home greeted me with a quiet that had learned new words. Lily sat with her knees tucked up and her purse spilled out on the table like it had turned inside out to confess. Her eyes were red but dry. She had reached that place where tears take a number and wait their turn. "They suspended me," she said again, but this time it sounded like a line she had practiced until it was true. "Now we deal in daylight," I said. "Tea?" She nodded. In the kitchen, the kettle set up its little song. I placed 2 cups on the table and moved the purse aside to make room for something that would not accuse her from a zipper. "Do you hate me?" she asked. "I do not hate you," I said. "I hate that you like the feeling of getting away with something more than you like the feeling of being right." She swallowed. "Are we being kicked out?" "You are being moved out," I said. "Not punished. Corrected. The spare room is mine again in 4 weeks. That gives you time to pack and find a small place within 20 minutes. Close enough for Sunday dinners when we earn them. Far enough for us to breathe." "What about money?" she said. "We cannot pay the mortgage if—" She stopped before she said a name. She had realized she did not know whose name truly sat where hers liked to imagine itself. "I will not let you starve," I said. "I will not let you live on me. I will help with first month's rent and a used couch if you pick one with a frame that will last more than a season." She stared. "Why be kind after what we said?" "Because kindness with a backbone is the only thing that fixes what pride breaks." The front door opened. Christopher walked in like a man who had met gravity for the first time. He put his keys in the bowl and did not miss. He sat. He looked at the table the way men look at a casket. "I am out," he said. "I know," I said. "He called you an investor," he said. "I called myself your father," I said. "It did not stop you from calling me something smaller." He nodded, as if the floor had told him something he could not deny. "What now?" "Now. Now you apologize without explanations," I said. "Now you look for work you are actually good at rather than work that lets you boss people. Now you stop spending your anger like cash. Now you move to a place that fits the size of your humility." He tried to smile and found a different shape instead. "Is this forever?" "Nothing is forever," I said. "But consequences live longer than excuses. We spend an hour on practical things, boxes, dates. Which tools in the garage are mine because I paid for them, and which are yours because you used them more days than I did?" The household ledger sat open and honest. We wrote lines that had numbers, then lines that had promises. We cut the promises in half and kept the numbers whole. When he stood, he did not ask for a hug. He placed his hand on the table and left it there. "Thank you for not crushing me," he said. "I am a builder," I said. "Builders remove walls that are not load-bearing. Sometimes the wall is a bad habit. Sometimes it is a lie." He nodded. He went to pack. Lily followed. In the hallway, they spoke in low voices. They were still married to a version of themselves that did not exist. They would have to choose new vows. I took my cup to the porch. The afternoon had changed its shirt again. A breeze moved the neighbor's wind chime with the soft authority of a nurse waking a patient. Across the street, a girl pedaled a small blue bike with hands clenched and eyes fierce. Her father jogged beside her with his palm open and not touching. She wobbled, corrected, wobbled, corrected. She reached the end of the block, turned, and pedaled back with a grin so bright the street forgave every parked car. I opened my ledger. I did not write numbers. I wrote truths. Kindness is not weakness. Boundaries are a kind of love. A mop can be a prop. A letter can be a key. A son can be wrong and still be loved. A father can be right and still be gentle. The next 3 weeks turned into a class none of us had signed up for. Christopher slept badly and woke early to hunt jobs that did not want the version of him that needed to perform. Lily met with lawyers who used words like cooperation and restitution in voices that implied jail without saying it. Boxes multiplied. The garage smelled like cardboard and memories that had no use in an apartment. On a Wednesday, I found my son on the back step staring at a wrench. "It is the one you gave me when I was 12, he said. "You fixed the sink with it," I said. "I flooded the kitchen with it," he said. "You learned," I said. "The water dried." He breathed out laughter that did not know whether it wanted to cry. "I do not like who I am when I am the boss." "Then do not be the boss," I said. "Be useful." He nodded. I got an interview. Logistics. No direct reports. They want someone who understands that the fastest route is not always the best when trucks share the road with school buses. "That sounds like a man I can respect," I said. He looked at me as if the word had waited for him on a shelf he had never reached. Moving day was quiet. They loaded a borrowed truck with boxes labeled kitchen, books, Lily's shoes, Christopher tools, bathroom do not drop, gifts we never used, Whitting china, why, and a single box labeled maybe. Lily hugged me at the door. It was fast and warm and surprised us both. "We will be back Sunday," she said. "Bring your appetite," I said. "I am making stew. I will not ask where the meat came from because that joke is old and lazy." She smiled, real. "We will bring bread." The truck pulled away. The house took a long in-breath and then exhaled into rooms that remembered their size. I walked through and touched door frames like checking pulse. That night, I made stew and set 2 bowls and then set a third because habits are stubborn. I ate on the porch. I listened to the quiet that did not accuse me of anything. The utility bill sat on the small table beside me with a green check on the corner. Paid. On Sunday, they came. They stood on the step like people who had rung a bell and wanted to be sure the right house answered. I opened the door and pulled them in and pointed them to chairs. We ate in the kitchen where all our worst lines had once rehearsed. We did not talk about money. We talked about the river and bread that cracks right and a neighbor who had strong opinions about roses. At the sink, Christopher rinsed bowls. He looked at the old faucet handle with a chip I can identify with my eyes closed. "I hated this house last month," he said. "Today it feels like a person I wronged." "You wronged me," I said. "The house only hosted the fight." He nodded. "Thank you for letting me pay for groceries next week." "That is not a thank you to me," I said. "That is a thank you to the version of you who can carry a bag without dropping the handles." He smiled. It landed. In the living room, Lily laughed at something on her phone, and then startled as if laughter might be against a rule. I let it stand. Laughter is a kind of apology when you let it be. A month later, Lily sent a message. Charges avoided. Restitution. New job, lower title. Clean slate. I answered with a thumbs up because sometimes words get in the way of respect. 2 months later, Christopher called from a loading dock at first light. He sent a photo of a sunrise that turned the asphalt into a river. "Got it right," he texted. "Sent the truck the long way to miss the school. Saved 10 minutes. Proud of you," I sent back. Dinner Sunday. Bring your stories. On a Thursday, when the sky smelled like metal, I walked to the river and sat on a bench with men who know mornings better than sleep. We talked about bad knees and good soup and the price of tomatoes. A woman with a small dog read headlines out loud to a stranger because she had that kind of voice. The world felt like a room where people had remembered how to stand without leaning on the wrong things. The only time I took the letter out after that was on the anniversary of the garage handshake. I sat at my little desk and smoothed it flat, and touched the grease mark, and laughed because it still transferred a faint print to my thumb. I put it back. The safe place in my house is not a safe. It is the pocket of the coat I wear to the porch when the air has that edge that means you will want a second cup. Kindness needs a backbone, or it falls over. The day you grow one is the day people learn the weight of your yes and your no. If this story met you where you live, tap subscribe to QuietRevenge and tell me in the comments which moment you would have handled differently and why.